proud to have your endorsement. And Andy, what about Andy's story? If you had not heard that story, that's worth being here at all. And what he did, and the two different parts of this state that they're from, shows the kind of coalition that we are putting together, not just to win in Iowa and do well in Iowa, but to win in this country. So thank you for that. And I'm going to miss some people, but I know a few other friends are here. Marty Anderson's out there somewhere. I'm proud to have her endorsement. We have some Akeo, I see you back there. Thank you. He brought me to the Des Moines Farmers Market, and he had his macaw, his bird, who was, I just gotten here, and baby, the bird was more popular than me. And that was exciting. I know at least 3 former legislators are here. David Johnson, who also changed out of the Republican Party, former legislator. Thank you. Thank you. And Steve Kwok is here as well. And Pat, I know I saw you when we came in. You're so retiring and quiet. Thank you for being here. Mostly, I want to tell you how excited we are to have made all 99 counties today. Everybody in Iowa. That is great. And also, it was a very, very big moment of pride for me to have my family with me, John and Abigail, when we went to that last county. We were on Christmas Eve, like many of you here. We were at church, and we went to see the little, the nativity little play they had during the service. And it reminded me of a story many, many years ago when Abigail was in the nativity play at that same church. And she was back then, now she's 24, then she was 4. And she was to play the angel. And they had her draped in these big angel wings, and we were in the pews, and she wouldn't go out to practice. And I say to her, why won't you go out there? Why won't you go out there? And she's like, because Mom, I want to be the donkey. And I said, no. Timmy and Joey are the donkey. You can't be the donkey. These 2 hot teenage boys were in the costume. And she says, well, then I want to be Mary. And I go, no, Mary is 14. I said, I don't understand. You have the coolest part. You get to go out at the end and spread your wings, and I don't get it. And she finally looked way up to the top of the church. She says, Mom, I don't know how to tell them. I don't know how to fly. And I said to her that moment, I said, honey, not all angels fly. So I want to start out by thanking you for being here on a Friday night when there is a lot of things you could be doing with your time. And you are truly the guardian angels of our democracy because you are giving others that may not even know you the wings to fly by caring this much about our country and being part of this great process that we call democracy. So thank you for that. So I made this promise to visit all 99 counties before I maybe knew just how far apart some of the men were, or that maybe I'd be visiting a planetarium at 11 at night, but we did that. Or that I thought there maybe would be a hearing coming up, an important one in the next month, and that maybe I'd have to get 27 counties down in 3.5 days. But the point of this, which is you should learn something about me, I kept my promise. More than that, it was a statement of purpose for me. And that is that I believe that we need someone as president who's going to be the president for not half of America, but all of America. Someone who will unite this country and bring people together, not only for a big victory, which we so badly need, but also for even bigger victories, to take on the pharmaceutical company, to bridge the rural-urban divide with infrastructure and broadband and expanded child care and housing, and yes, to save our climate once and for all. The fact is, we can take back the White House, but we don't want to have that victory by eking it out at 4 in the morning. Yes, it would be nice. But we know if we don't do that state at 4 in the morning will not be Iowa. My theory of the case is if we want to get all of these important things done, we can't just win by little, we have to win big. And that means keeping the House of Representatives strong, re-electing Abby and Cindy, and electing Rita and JD, and winning the U.S. Senate seat in the state of Iowa. That is how you send Mitch McConnell packing. An opportunity to turn back the division and the exclusion, the bitterness and the hate. We can actually work together again. We have a chance to defeat a man who treats facts just like a brochure copy for one of his failed real estate deals, who's publicly lied. Are you ready for this? The Washington Post keeps track of this. Who has publicly lied over 15,000 times, an average of 14 times every single day of his term, who cheats the American people like he cheats on one of his golf courses. The difference between the people and the golf course is that it's people's lives that are at stake when he is President of the United States. Instead, we can start believing again. We can start trusting each other again. We have a chance not only to defeat Donald Trump, but to defeat what he stands for. My profound advice after seeing what has happened around this country is that we better not screw this up. Because look at what we've seen in just the last month. We have seen the state of Virginia, where with this incredibly diverse slate of candidates across that state, they won. They wanted red districts, purple districts, and blue state districts. And they flipped the state house, and they flipped the state senate. We won in 2 critical governor's races, including re-electing the Democratic governor of Louisiana and electing a Democratic governor in the state of Kentucky. So Mitch McConnell now has a Democratic governor. And you know what those 2 states had in common? The night before, who went down there and campaigned for the opponent? So my question, that was Donald Trump. My question is, where can we send him next? So we have one not only there, but if you look in 2018 in Kansas with the new great governor, Laura Kelly. She beat Chris Kobach. We won in Michigan, with maybe you haven't heard of the governor there, but her name is Gretchen Whitmer. She actually also beat a Republican by running on the slogan, "Fix the damn roads." We won in Wisconsin, where my favorite 4 words in the Midwest political jargon these days are former Governor Scott Walker. We did all this. And we did not do it with celebrity candidates. We didn't always even do it with the person that had the most money. We did it with the people who fit their states, the people who could bring people with them, the people who reached out and proved to the voters they could get something done. Just imagine if we have a president who works to heal this country instead of harming it. A president who sought out different voices instead of just her own. A president who believes in decency and humility. A president who is in this fight for you and didn't think for 1 second that it was just about herself. If that's the future you want, if you believe, like I do, that politics is, in the words of the great Paul Wellstone, how about that we all do better when we all do better? If you believe a president sets more than policy for this country, but also the tone, the civility for this country, and if you believe a president should not just stand her ground, yes, but also seek common ground, Well, I'm Amy Klobuchar, and I'm running for president. I am sure, as I noted on that debate stage, that you all have heard Donald Trump say that he is self-made. But in fact, he started off with a small loan. Those were his words. Those were $1 million from his dad. But actually, over the course of his career, he got $413 million from his dad. $413 million. And the last 3 years have shown us that that $413 million windfall left him with a sense of what? Entitlement. A sense of actually vindictiveness for some reason. A sense that even the presidency is just another cookie jar that he can raid. I come from a different sense, a different set of values. My ancestors, they came to Minnesota as immigrants, looking for a better life. My grandpa, who was Slovenian, he worked 1,500 feet underground in the mines up in northern Minnesota, the iron ore mines, and he did that so he could have a better life for his kids and actually for his brothers and sisters. He was the oldest boy, and when his parents died, he had to make sure that they could make it too, and there were 8 of them. But he saved money in a coffee can with my grandma in their basement to send my dad and his brother to college. And my dad went to a community college. So that money in that coffee can, and you cannot spit $413 million in a coffee can. That coffee can, that was my family trust. And this is what I believe. And my grandpa knew this when he was forging on the long and dangerous days in that mine. They used to line up the caskets in the church in town. My dad remembers this because so many were lost because the mines were unsafe before the unions played a major role in making them safe. The opportunity my grandpa got, he gave to my dad. And my dad got a better education. He became a newspaper man. He got to see the world. My mom, she was raised with no money either in Milwaukee, and she came to Minnesota, and she taught 2nd grade until she was 70 years old. So our family story is a story of opportunity. The simple idea that when you are given opportunity from a parent, from a grandparent, from someone you work with, from a teacher, from a neighbor, from a friend, that should not leave you with a sense of entitlement. No, that should leave you with a sense of obligation. An obligation to lift people up instead of slamming them down. An obligation to lift people up instead of hoarding it for yourself. So that's really how I got involved in public service. My family, yes. But also because when Abigail was born, she's here, so it's a really useful thing to have a story so you can see her beautiful face. But when she was born, she actually was really, really sick, and she could not swallow, and it was a big surprise. We thought we were going to have this great, everything was going to be great, like all parents expect. But then, as Ruth Ann knows what happened with her little boy that she adopted, not everything is quite what you expect sometimes. And that's a measure sometimes of a parent, but it's also a measure of a community and how a community handles that. So when Abigail was born, she couldn't swallow. Total surprise. It was total surprise. They didn't know if she had a tumor. She was in test after test. This little baby on an x-ray after x-ray after x-ray. And I had been up for 2 nights. And then they said, we don't really know what's wrong, but she's in intensive care. She might have a genetic disease. She probably has a tumor. We don't know. But sadly, the insurance rules say you need to get out of here. And I go, what? And they said, that's the new rules. 24 hours. That's all you can spend in the hospital. I had no sleep. I was a new mom. They were throwing all this stuff at me that I had to learn, and they kicked me out of the hospital. And when John was wheeling me out on that wheelchair, I literally looked up. This is funny. I had this moment in the middle of all this tragedy, and I go, I bet this wouldn't happen to the wife of the head of the insurance company. I did say that. I did take that moment to think of it in a larger context. But anyway, weeks went by. She was in and out of the hospital. She actually didn't get better for a number of years. She was fed by tubes, but at that very moment, she was hooked up to all these machines. And that was, by the way, a lot of gifts for me. The gift of seeing other parents She ended up coming through that, but a lot of parents whose kids have permanent disabilities. Ruth Ann's story, what they go through, the gift of seeing that firsthand was a gift I brought with me my whole life. But the other gift I learned was how to actually get something done. Because when I got out of there, I started reading about that rule and how bad it was for families. And I joined up with some other people in the legislature that had had the same problems. I wasn't elected to office at the time, so I literally went there as a mom and testified and told my story. And I learned a few things from that experience. Our whole goal was to make sure you got at least 48 hours in the hospital. And the first thing I learned was that, and maybe some of our legislators will relate to this, because at the time it was almost all men in the Minnesota legislature. And when you start talking about embarrassing things like episiotomies in front of an almost all male legislative committee, I think they would have passed the New Deal like that. All right, okay. The other thing that I learned was how to get things done. And in fact, the House and Senate bills were a little bit different, and people were trying to use that divide to try to make it delayed so it wouldn't take effect maybe for a year, maybe for even longer than that. So what I did is I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference committee, so they outnumbered the people that were trying to delay it. And when the legislator said, well, when should this take effect? Because it usually takes effect August 1st. And all my friends raised their hand, and they're like, now. And so they not only did they not delay it, they moved it up so it took effect the day the governor signed it. That happened. That was how we passed one of the first laws in the country that later became a federal law when Bill Clinton was president, guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And after that, I loved this life. I loved getting things done for people. I knew you could do it if you just set your mind to it and you were creative about how you got it done. And I want to tell you something very clearly. I am a proud progressive, but I am someone that believes that you can be both progressive and practical at the same time. Because that story that I just told you, that was about taking on powerful interests. That was about getting things done, but the only way we got things done was actually by finding some common ground. In that case, we got really strong support by both sides of the aisle, and we were able to get it done. Common decency, common goals. That's been the hallmark of my work since I got involved in politics. Standing my ground while seeking common ground. When I got elected to the Hennepin County Attorney, I was the first woman in that job. I pushed to improve the criminal justice system. I was a strong supporter of drug courts. I still am. And I fought to ban assault weapons, even way back then. And I took on hate crimes. When I got to the Senate, I've been responsible, as was mentioned by Andy, for passing over 100 bills, and Ruth Ann, where I am the lead Democrat, including 41 that broke the gridlock of this administration. That's a nice way of saying Donald Trump signed the bills into law. That's what we realized that. Remember that passed last week. So, if you cannot make progress, how can you truly be a progressive? You can say you're progressive, but in the end, after you're there, year on and year end, you better have something to show for it. I'm running for president to put an end to the polarization, to the gridlock, to the dysfunction, because it is our only hope of making the American dream real, of giving everyone the opportunity I just told you in my story, and I know that you all have your own stories as well. I will end this president's shameful efforts to gut the Affordable Care Act and its protection for pre-existing conditions. And by the way, as I listen to Ruth Ann's story, you think about that. The people that most came up to me when that was going on in Congress, when that bill was pending, that vote was pending, was people with kids with disabilities. I remember a mom in a small town parade who was pushing a stroller, and she said, "This is my son. He has Down syndrome." She said, "I will do anything to fight for my boy to keep his health care. But remember," she said, This is what a pre-existing condition looks like. That's what that fight was about. And by the way, as we look at the Affordable Care Act, I want you to remember one thing. As we look at, do we blow it up, do we this, you know where I am on this, I think we make it better. The Affordable Care Act is now 10 points more popular than the President of the United States. Okay? So as President, I know we can build on Obamacare by doing a few things. First of all, ending the privatization of Medicaid right here in the state of Iowa. For consumers with a non-profit public option, and we can be both progressive and practical by taking on this issue in a smart way, not by kicking 143 million Americans off of their current health insurance, but by making the Affordable Care Act stronger. You do that with that non-profit public option. You do that by taking on big pharma. And I have been leading that effort since I got to the U.S. Senate. That means getting rid of that provision in law that bans Medicare from it bans Medicare. It doesn't just sound, it bans Medicare from negotiating for better prices for our seniors. They got that in because they have 2 lobbyists for every member of Congress. They think they own Washington, they might, but they do not own me. And we can lift that. We can also greatly improve the Affordable Care Act and our healthcare system by finally reckoning with the addictions that we face in our state and in our country, and with mental health care. So I've combined these two into one policy. They're different in many ways, but my funding source is the same because so often mental health gets left behind. Yet 1 in 5 Americans suffer from mental illness sometime in their life. There are only 64 public mental health beds in the state of Iowa right now. That is a travesty. So we need a president that's willing to come to grips with this and take it on. For me, it is personal. My dad struggled with alcoholism most of his life. When I was growing up, by the time John and I got married, he had 3 DWIs. 2 of them were back in the 70s, so there wasn't much consequence, and he kept drinking. But by the time he got the third one, the law has changed. And the judge looked at him, and he said to him, you know what? You got to choose jail or treatment. And my dad chose treatment because he had insurance that covered that treatment, and because, in his words, he was pursued by grace. He had his faith, he had his family, he had his friends, and it changed his life. And so, right now, by the way, a little footnote, he is 91 years old. We just saw him at Christmas, visited him in the assisted living, and about 1.5 years ago, he was telling me how his AA group still visits him in assisted living. And in his words, well, it's hard to get a drink around here anyway. But his life changed, and I think everyone should have that right to have their life changed. I think everyone should have that right to be pursued by grace. That's one big way that we can improve on the Affordable Care Act. Another, by the way, instead of relitigating this by lawsuits like Donald Trump is trying to get rid of it, we can actually stop those lawsuits. The president can do that herself. Stop those lawsuits, let it be, improve it, and then take on the elephant that doesn't even fit in this room, and that is long-term care. We should be dealing with the big challenge of long-term care, which is everything from finding a cure to Alzheimer's, which is going to affect 14 million people by the year 2050, to improving long-term care insurance, to making it easier for people to live in their homes. That is what we should be dealing with as we see a doubling of our senior population. So what else can we do if we have a president who wants to do it? Well, I will take on big oil and take real steps to fight the climate crisis that threatens our existence. I'm not taking a dime of fossil fuel money in this campaign. And on day 1 of my term, we will rejoin the International Climate Agreement. When we got out of that agreement, there were only only two countries not in there, Nicaragua and Syria. They have now gotten in the agreement. We are the only ones not in the agreement. On day 2, we will bring back the clean power rules from the Obama administration, which would make a big difference. On day 3, we will bring back the gas mileage standards, which the car companies in the U.S. had wanted to do until Donald Trump tubed it. And on day 4, 5, and 6, we will introduce sweeping legislation to deal with climate change. And on day 7, we will rest. We won't really rest. That's what we'll do. So I actually took on this issue in my announcement in the middle of the blizzard with 4 inches of snow in my head, leading the president to send out a tweet making fun of me for talking about climate change in the snow and giving me the name that I actually like, Snow Woman. To which I wrote back, Mr. President, the science is on my side and I'd like to see how your hair would fare in a blizzard. So, what else? What are some other big challenges that we have to take on? Well, one is taking on the NRA. And like Minnesota is a proud hunting state, so is Iowa. And I look at these gun safety measures and I say, do they hurt my Uncle Dick in the deer stand? They do not. Universal background checks does not hurt my Uncle Dick in the deer stand. And the most amazing transformation has happened in our country. It didn't happen when I was in law enforcement when we tried to reinstate the assault weapon ban. We couldn't get it done, not even with the police chiefs. It actually sadly did not even happen after Sandy Hook when those parents valiantly tried. What happened when those kids in Parkland stood up? That's when things changed in a different way. When those kids stood up, kids across the country saw them, and they started asking questions. It was not unlike what happened with gay marriage. Yes, I'm aware Iowa was one of the first states to have gay marriage. It was not unlike what happened with that across the country. What happened was the kids started to say to their dads and their grandpas, including boys, well, wait a minute, I know I like to go out hunting too, but why can't we have universal background checks? Why can't we have a limit on magazines? Why can't we have police the right amount of time to be able to vet things? That's what changed things. So you got to elect people like Abby and Cindy to the Congress that were willing to vote for universal background checks. And I think you know where the story is now. This story is not over. Because this story is going to have a major, major chapter in 2020. But the chapter on the way was 2018. And that is when the House passed universal background checks after the new Congress came in. They closed the Charleston loophole, which will give the police more time to vet. And they closed the boyfriend loophole, which is my bill that I've been trying to push for years, that I wrote, that says that domestic abusers, convicted domestic abuser, should not be able to get out AK-47. Well, guess what happened to those 3 bills, despite having some Republican support in the House? They are all sitting where? On Mitch McConnell's desk, along with 400 other bills that are awaiting action. So we get back to my original premise, that if we want to get these things done, we can't just win by little, we have to win big. What else do we need to do? We have to end the unfair economic policies of this president who gives billionaires handouts while the rest of us get stuck with the bill. We will never forget his words when he went down to Mar-a-Lago after passing the tax bill, surrounded by his friends. Were any of you there? Because I didn't want to embarrass anyone. They were there. Teo, no, you weren't there. Okay, good. Just want to make sure, because what he said in that room, what he said was this. He said, you just got a lot richer. That's what he said. And we will not forget that. That's what he did. He went to that room in Mar-a-Lago and said this. Me, I want to come back to this room and say, I got you universal child care. That we did better for retirement. That we did better for our seniors. That we did something about climate change. That means representing the people that you were elected to represent. It means connecting an affordable education to today's economy. Doubling Pell Grants for public and private colleges. Providing free 1- and 2-year degrees. That's what Ruth Ann was talking about. Respecting the dignity of work. Remembering that we're going to have over 1 million openings for home health care workers in this country. We are. So if they can't get by and they're not able to afford to live, that's not going to work very well for our seniors. So we have to figure out a way to do that, and that means respecting the dignity of work. On all of these issues, we will be progressive, yes, but we will also be practical. Real plans, not pipe dreams. A real plan means you know how you're going to pay for it. Check my website. I showed every single, dotted every I, crossed every T, unlike our president. And you can pass it into law. A real plan means I will not promise what I cannot deliver. I believe as long as we win by a good margin, we can get all these things done. Now, we all know there are powerful interests standing in our way. That's why I put forward that 100-day plan. FDR was the first president to do it. And he did it because he was facing an economic crisis. We are facing a trust crisis right now. And so what we need for people to understand the government has their back is to act immediately. And in that 100-day plan, I suggest you look at it, 137 things a president can do without Congress that are legal. That is the key. And even the lobbyists will not be able to sign off some checks to stop it. A president can do it herself. It means jump-starting real immigration reform, leading to passing a bill by the end of the year. It means standing with our allies rather than posing up to dictators and subverting an election. You've heard of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, I have the 5 R's for foreign policy. That means restoring American leadership, repairing our alliances, rejoining international agreements, responding to threats around the world in an appropriate way, and reasserting American values. But you can really just get it down to 1 R, and that means returning to sanity in our foreign policy. That's what we have to do. And there is something else that we must do at home if we hope to lead the world, and if we hope to work together as one America to meet the challenges we face. We must heed the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, that we are all, quote, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. That means when white supremacists rally in support of hate, there aren't good people on both sides. There's only one side, and that is the American side, and that is the good side. We have to respect all people, again, regardless of their race or their religious faith or their national origin or sexual orientation. We have to replace meanness with meaning, polarization with cooperation. This means, as I mentioned, taking back the Senate and getting rid of the #1 polarizer on Capitol Hill. It is easy to hurl insults, to peck out angry tweets in your bathrobe, and kick the real work, it's just a bad image, I know, and kick the real work of governing, the real work of leading down the road. It's easy to draw lines in the sand to sketch out grand ideological schemes that may never see the light of day. The hard work, the unglamorous work, as these guys sitting behind me know, the real work of democracy is finding what we have in common, what unites Americans, what we can actually achieve together. I learned that from my grandpa's sacrifices, that the real glory comes from doing not what's easy, but what's hard. I learned that from my dad's struggles with alcoholism, that really what matters is you can have the determination and grit to get through whatever obstacles are in your path. I learned from my mom's decades in the classroom that real progress takes patience, not taking your marbles and running home. And I learned in my 3 terms as a United States Senator something that the president will never learn. And that is, to get across a bridge, you have to build one, not blow one up. That may be why, and it may be that philosophy and what I've learned in life that has allowed me to win every single congressional district, every single time, 3 times, in every district in Minnesota. And by the way, when I have run, I have led, not just run for myself. We have flipped the state house every single time I've led our ticket. We have flipped it to Democrat. So if you want to broaden our tent and widen our coalition and to lengthen our coattails in this country, we have to run with that philosophy. If you want to bring common sense to our national debate, then I hope you'll work with me. If you want to bring heartland humility to the White House, come join us. I got in this fight as a working mom. I just told you that story. Like so many of you who saw injustice and rallied other moms to stop it. That's all it takes, all it has ever taken, the will to stand up and say stop. You heard Andy tell the story of Joseph Welch, that lawyer who grew up in an immigrant family from Primgar. He was the one that stood up to Joseph McCarthy and said, stop, have you no sense of decency? So many times we see the people that you least expect to win, that you least expect to be the ones that stand up, end up being the ones that stand up for the decency of this nation. So I am asking you to stand up with me to restore the decency of this nation again, to rise up to make this country work for everyone again, to fight for an America that stands its ground while seeking common ground. I'm asking you to join our campaign to make our cause your cause, and I promise you this, if you do that, the best is yet to come. Thank you, everyone.